Jack Carter had been stranded on this strange planet for 2 days. His ship had crash-landed deep in the heart of an alien jungle, surrounded by towering trees, thick vines, and the distant sounds of unknown creatures. His supplies were low, and his only hope of survival was to find shelter and food. As he walked cautiously through the dense vegetation, he kept his blaster close, scanning the surroundings for any signs of danger. The air was damp, filled with the scent of moss and something metallic. Everything was quiet except for the occasional rustling of leaves in the wind. Then suddenly, a scream. Jack froze. The sound was high-pitched, filled with terror and pain. It echoed through the jungle, cutting through the silence like a blade. His heart pounded as he turned in the direction of the noise. It was not the cry of an animal. It sounded intelligent. Another scream followed, this time even louder. Whoever it was, they were suffering. Jack hesitated. He didn't know what kind of creatures lived on this planet. Was this a trap? Was something trying to lure him in? But then came a third scream, desperate, filled with agony. Jack clenched his fists. He couldn't ignore it. Taking a deep breath, he moved forward, stepping carefully over the tangled roots and thick ferns. His boots made little noise against the soft ground as he followed the sound. The jungle grew darker, the trees blocking out most of the sunlight. His grip tightened on his blaster. The cries became clearer as he neared a small clearing. Jack crouched behind a large tree, his eyes scanning ahead. His breath caught in his throat at what he saw. In the center of the clearing, a young alien girl was tied to a wooden structure, her arms bound above her head. Her skin was pale blue, her hair dark and tangled. She looked no older than a teenager in human years. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears. Her clothes were torn, revealing bruises and cuts. She was suffering. Surrounding her were tribal aliens, creatures with rough, scaly skin and sharp tusks protruding from their mouths. They wore primitive armor made of bones and leaves, their bodies painted in strange symbols. They held long spears, their eyes gleaming with something sinister. Jack's stomach twisted as he realized what was happening. They were torturing her. One of the tribal aliens stepped forward, holding a bowl filled with a thick, dark liquid. He dipped a brush into it and painted strange markings on the girl's forehead. The others cheered, stomping their feet on the ground. It was a ritual, a sacrifice. Jack's mind raced. If he did nothing, she would die. But if he tried to help, he would be up against a whole group of armed aliens. Was it worth the risk? Then the tribal leader raised a flaming torch. The girl flinched, her body trembling. They were going to burn her alive. Jack felt something snap inside him. He couldn't stand by and watch. He gritted his teeth and raised his blaster, taking aim. He had to act now. Jack didn't have time to think. He had to act. His pulse thundered in his ears as he gripped his blaster and took a deep breath. The tribal aliens were too focused on their ritual to notice him lurking in the shadows. The leader lifted the burning torch higher, the flames crackling in the still air. The alien girl struggled against her restraints, her terrified eyes scanning the crowd. She knew what was coming. Jack's jaw tightened. He raised his blaster and aimed at the torch. With a sharp pull of the trigger, the blue energy blast shot through the air. The bolt struck the wooden handle, sending it flying from the leader's hand. The fire sputtered as it hit the ground, and for a moment, the jungle fell silent. The tribal aliens turned in shock, their glowing yellow eyes searching the trees. Jack remained hidden, his body pressed against the thick trunk of a tree. His heart pounded like a war drum. He knew he had seconds before they found him. The leader growled something in a guttural language, pointing a clawed finger toward the forest. The warriors spread out, gripping their spears tightly. They weren't going to let this interruption go unanswered. Jack's mind raced. He needed to get to the girl, but there were too many of them. He watched as two warriors advanced toward the tree line, their sharp eyes scanning the darkness. One of them raised a hand, motioning to the others. Jack knew what was coming. Without hesitation, he fired again, this time hitting the ground in front of them. Dirt and smoke exploded into the air. The warriors hissed, jumping back in alarm. Taking advantage of their distraction, Jack moved swiftly, weaving through the dense foliage. He stayed low, using the natural cover to avoid being spotted. He reached the edge of the clearing. The girl was still tied up, her breathing rapid, her eyes darting around in panic. Jack could see her wrists bleeding from the tight ropes. She didn't understand what was happening, but she knew one thing. Someone had interfered. Jack didn't have time to reassure her. He stepped into the open, his blaster aimed at the nearest warrior. The alien hissed and lunged at him with a spear, but Jack was faster. He fired, hitting the creature in the shoulder. It roared in pain, stumbling backward. The other warriors let out cries of rage. The leader bellowed a command, and suddenly, all hell broke loose. Jack sprinted toward the wooden structure, dodging a spear that whizzed past his head. The girl flinched as he reached her, her body tense with fear. He could see the confusion in her eyes. He wasn't one of them. He was something different. "I'm getting you out of here," Jack said, his voice firm but calm. He pulled out a small combat knife and began cutting the ropes. A warrior charged at him from the side. Jack barely had time to react. He spun around, raising his arm just in time to block the attack. The impact sent a shock of pain through his bones, but he didn't let go of the knife. With a quick movement, he slashed at the alien's leg, making it stumble. Another one came at him. Jack ducked just as a spear swung toward his head, missing him by inches. He kicked the warrior in the chest, sending it crashing into the wooden structure. The entire frame shook, and the girl let out a sharp gasp as the ropes loosened slightly. Jack turned back to her and cut the last knot. The girl collapsed into his arms, her body weak from exhaustion. Up close, she looked even more fragile. Her skin had a faint shimmer under the firelight, and her eyes were an unusual shade of violet. She was unlike anything Jack had ever seen. But there was no time to stare. The warriors were regrouping, their anger turning into something even more dangerous. Determination. "Can you run?" Jack asked quickly. The girl hesitated, then nodded weakly. Jack grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the trees. The warriors roared behind them, the sound of stomping feet shaking the ground. They were not going to let their sacrifice escape. Jack and the girl sprinted into the jungle, the thick vegetation slowing them down. Branches scratched at Jack's arms, and the uneven ground made it difficult to keep a steady pace. But he didn't stop. The girl stumbled, her breath ragged. Jack caught her before she fell, his grip firm but gentle. He didn't know where they were going. He only knew they had to keep moving. Behind them, the tribal aliens were closing in fast. Their guttural voices echoed through the jungle, their rage filling the air like a storm. Jack's mind raced. He needed a plan, and he needed one fast. Because if they got caught, there would be no second chances. Jack pushed forward through the thick jungle, his breath coming in sharp bursts. The alien girl clung to his hand, her fingers ice cold but gripping with surprising strength. The roars of the tribal aliens grew louder behind them, their pursuit relentless. The jungle was dense, but Jack knew it wasn't enough to hide them for long. They needed a way out, and fast. His mind raced as he scanned the terrain. Massive trees stretched high above, their twisted roots creating natural barriers. Vines hung like curtains between the branches, and the air smelled of damp earth and something bitter, almost metallic. The ground was uneven, filled with moss-covered rocks and thick patches of mud. The girl stumbled, nearly falling. Jack tightened his grip and pulled her up. She was exhausted, barely able to keep pace. He could feel her body trembling. Whatever those creatures had done to her, she was in no shape to run much longer. Jack slowed, forcing himself to think. Running blindly would only get them caught. They needed a hiding spot. Up ahead, he spotted a cluster of large boulders, half covered in vines. A narrow gap between them led into darkness, a cave. It wasn't ideal, but it was their best chance. "This way," he whispered urgently, leading the girl toward the entrance. They squeezed through the gap, their bodies scraping against the rough stone. The air inside was cooler, damp. Jack moved deeper, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. The space was small, barely enough to crouch in, but it would have to do. The girl collapsed against the cave wall, her breath ragged. Jack pressed a finger to his lips, signaling for silence. Outside, the jungle fell still. Then came the sound of snapping branches. Jack's muscles tensed. Shadows moved just beyond the cave entrance. The warriors had arrived. Their guttural voices carried through the air, speaking in a language Jack didn't understand. A torch flickered outside, casting eerie light against the cave walls. One of the warriors stopped near the entrance, sniffing the air. Jack's grip tightened on his blaster. If they were found, there would be no talking their way out of this. The girl's breathing quickened. Jack could feel her panic rising. He reached out and gently touched her arm, trying to calm her. She flinched but met his gaze. Her violet eyes were filled with fear, but also trust. Jack turned his attention back to the entrance. The warrior was still there, head tilted, listening. Jack could hear the deep, animalistic breathing. A long pause stretched between them. Then, another warrior called out, and the one at the entrance grunted in response. The footsteps faded. The torches moved away. Jack didn't move, didn't even breathe, until the jungle was silent again. Only then did he let out a slow breath. The girl sagged against the cave wall, her whole body shaking. Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out a small water canister. He held it out to her. "Here," he whispered. She hesitated before taking it, drinking in small, careful sips. Jack leaned back, trying to process everything. He still didn't know who she was, what those creatures had wanted with her, or why they had been performing that ritual. But one thing was clear: they weren't safe yet. After a moment, the girl spoke, her voice soft, hesitant. "Why? Help me?" Her words were broken, but understandable. Jack frowned. "Because I couldn't just stand there and let them hurt you." She studied him for a long moment, as if trying to understand. Then she looked down at her wrists, rubbing the raw skin where the ropes had been. Jack knew they couldn't stay in the cave forever. The tribal aliens would be hunting them. If they wanted to survive, they needed a plan. But first, he needed answers. He turned to the girl, his voice firm but calm. "Who are you?" he asked. "And why were they after you?" She hesitated, glancing toward the cave entrance, as if afraid the creatures would return at the mention of them. Then, in a whisper, she spoke words that sent a chill down Jack's spine. "They need my blood, to awaken something." Jack's stomach dropped. This wasn't just some barbaric ritual. This was something much, much worse. Jack felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The girl's words echoed in his mind. "They need my blood to awaken something." He clenched his fists, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. He had seen and survived many strange things in his years as a mercenary, but this was something darker. The tribal aliens weren't just tormenting her for cruelty's sake. They were trying to bring something back to life, something that required her blood. Jack inhaled deeply, trying to steady himself. The cave around them felt smaller now, as if the weight of the truth had shrunk the walls. The girl, still trembling, pulled her knees to her chest. Her violet eyes flickered with fear, but also with something else. Determination. Jack shifted closer, lowering his voice. "Tell me everything. What are they trying to awaken?" The girl hesitated. Her hands gripped her arms, fingers pressing into her skin. Then, in a hushed voice, she began. "A long time ago, my people lived here. Before the tribes. Before the jungle took over, we were scientists, explorers. But we were also fools." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Fools." She nodded, her gaze distant. "We discovered something. A creature, something ancient. It was buried deep beneath this land, locked away for a reason. But we wanted to study it, understand it. We thought we could control it. Jack's stomach twisted. And you couldn't. The girl swallowed hard. No, it woke up. It changed us. Turned many into monsters. It whispered in their minds, made them hunger for things no living being should crave. A chill settled in Jack's bones, and the ones that weren't changed. We fought back. Those of us who still had our minds left, we sealed it away again, deep underground, beneath the ruins of our home. And we fled. My people left this planet, hoping never to return. She paused, her fingers gripping the fabric of her torn dress. But some stayed behind. Jack exhaled slowly. The tribes. She nodded. They are the descendants of those who heard the whispers and chose to follow them. They worship the thing beneath the ruins. They believe that if they awaken it, they will become its chosen ones. She looked up at him, her voice trembling. But they don't understand. It doesn't choose. It only consumes. Jack ran a hand through his hair. This wasn't just about saving the girl anymore. This was about stopping something far worse. How do we stop them? He asked. The girl hesitated before reaching into the folds of her clothing. From a hidden pocket, she pulled out a small metallic object. It gleamed faintly in the dim cave light, covered in intricate alien symbols. This, she said, this is the key. My people created it as a failsafe. If activated at the ruins, it will destroy whatever is left of the creature, for good. Jack reached for it, but she pulled it back. There's a problem, she said. The ruins are deep in their territory, guarded at all times. Jack sighed. Of course, it was never easy. All right, he said, rolling his shoulders. Then we go there. We get in, activate this thing, and get out. The girl gave him a wary look. You make it sound simple. Jack smirked. It never is. Outside the cave, the jungle was still, but Jack knew the silence wouldn't last. The tribes wouldn't stop hunting them. They had to move. Now. He held out his hand. Are you ready? She stared at him for a long moment before taking his hand. No, she admitted, but let's go anyway. With that, they slipped out into the darkness, racing toward the ruins, and toward whatever nightmare waited for them beneath the earth. The jungle was alive with whispers. The wind rustled the thick canopy above. Insects hummed in the undergrowth, and distant drums pounded like an ancient heartbeat. Jack and the girl moved swiftly, their footsteps muffled by the damp earth. Every shadow seemed to watch them. Every rustling leaf felt like a threat. The ruins weren't far now. Jack could see the jagged remains of stone structures rising from the jungle floor, their surfaces covered in strange symbols worn by time. Vines crept over broken pillars, reclaiming what had once belonged to an advanced civilization. The girl, still clutching the metallic device tightly, kept glancing over her shoulder. They know we're coming, she whispered. Jack's grip tightened around his rifle. Then we better move fast. They reached the outer edge of the ruins and ducked behind a crumbling wall. Beyond it, the ancient city stretched before them, swallowed by nature but still standing. And in the center, where the grandest structure loomed, a fire burned. Figures moved around it, their silhouettes dancing in the flickering glow. The tribes. Jack studied them carefully. They were dressed in tattered remnants of their ancestors' uniforms, now decorated with bones and war paint. Some carried weapons made of stone and metal, crude yet deadly. And at the heart of the gathering, an altar stood, a stone slab, slick with something dark. Dried blood. Jack's jaw tightened. They'd done this before. The girl nodded grimly. Many times. His eyes moved past the altar and found something worse, a massive stone doorway, partially buried in the earth. Symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. It pulsed like a living thing, responding to the ritual happening above it. Jack felt it before he heard it. a deep, low vibration, like something shifting beneath the ruins. The creature was stirring. The girl inhaled sharply. "We're running out of time." Jack turned to her. "How do we activate the device?" She hesitated. "We need to place it on the altar. Once it connects to the old energy of my people, it will trigger a final lockdown, permanently sealing whatever is below." Jack's gaze flicked back to the crowd. There were at least 30 of them, all armed, all ready to defend their ritual. "Great," he muttered. "We just have to get past an entire cult." The girl looked at him with wide eyes. "You have a plan, right?" Jack checked his gear. He had a few explosives, some ammo, and a knife. Not ideal. "Yeah," he said, "improvise." Before she could argue, he moved. Slipping through the shadows, he circled toward the back of the crowd. The pounding drums covered his footsteps, and the flickering flames created just enough darkness for him to work with. He pulled a small explosive from his belt, set the timer for 15 seconds, and tossed it toward the far side of the ruins. It landed behind an old, collapsed structure. 15 seconds later, boom. The explosion rocked the jungle, sending birds screeching into the sky. The tribe spun in alarm, their weapons raised, eyes darting toward the destruction. Jack didn't wait. He grabbed the girl's wrist and sprinted forward. They reached the altar just as chaos erupted. The tribe shouted, running toward the blast site, momentarily forgetting their sacred ritual. Jack pressed the girl forward. Now. She didn't hesitate. She placed the device on the altar, and the moment it touched the stone, the air changed. A low hum filled the ruins, growing into a deafening vibration. The symbols on the altar flared to life, casting a blinding blue light. The stone doorway shook violently, the earth trembling beneath it. The tribes realized what was happening. A roar of fury rose behind them as the warriors turned back, eyes burning with rage. Jack grabbed the girl and pulled her behind the altar as arrows and spears flew through the air. He fired back, dropping 2 warriors before ducking for cover. The ground cracked. A horrible guttural screech echoed from below. Jack risked a glance at the doorway. The glowing symbols flickered wildly, as if something was fighting the seal. A massive, clawed hand slammed against the stone from within, trying to force its way out. The girl gasped. "It's too strong." Jack gritted his teeth. He had one last explosive, a bigger one. He yanked it from his belt, twisted the timer, and threw it straight at the base of the doorway. The explosion shook the entire ruins. Flames erupted, sending stone and debris flying. The tribe screamed as the shockwave knocked them off their feet. The ground split open, swallowing parts of the ruins in a cloud of dust. Then, silence. Jack coughed, struggling to his feet. The altar was shattered, the glowing symbols gone. The stone doorway, destroyed. The girl stared at the ruins, her hands shaking. "We did it," she whispered. Jack nodded. His body ached, but they were alive. More importantly, the thing below was never getting out. Behind them, the few remaining tribes staggered to their feet, their expressions shifting from fury to horror. Their god was gone. Jack didn't wait for them to process it. Time to go. He grabbed the girl's hand, and together they ran, disappearing into the jungle as the ruins collapsed behind them. The jungle was eerily silent. The ground still trembled beneath Jack's feet as he and the girl pushed forward, deeper into the dense foliage. Behind them, the ruins lay in smoldering wreckage, the massive stone doorway obliterated. Whatever had lurked beneath was now buried, hopefully forever. Jack stole a glance at the girl. She was breathing heavily, her silver eyes reflecting the dim light of the moon as it peeked through the thick canopy. Her hands trembled, though whether from exhaustion or the aftershock of what had just happened, he couldn't tell. "We need to keep moving," he said in a low voice. She nodded, but her expression was distant. Something was wrong. Jack didn't press her. Not yet. Instead, he focused on their surroundings. The jungle, once filled with the sounds of insects and distant animal calls, was now deathly still. That wasn't a good sign. "They're coming," the girl whispered suddenly. Jack stiffened. "Who?" She stopped walking, her gaze darting around the trees. "The survivors. The tribes. They won't stop hunting us." Jack clenched his jaw. He had expected as much. They had destroyed something sacred, something that had given the tribal beings power and purpose. Revenge was inevitable. The underbrush rustled in the distance. Faint, deliberate movements. Jack's hand went to his weapon. "They're tracking us," he muttered. The girl took a shaky breath. "They'll never stop. Unless—" Jack turned to her. "Unless what?" She hesitated. Then, slowly, she held up her wrist. The metallic band around it pulsed faintly with an otherworldly glow. Jack frowned. "What is that?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she placed a hand over it, muttering something in a language Jack didn't understand. A holographic interface flickered to life above her wrist, displaying symbols and unfamiliar codes. Jack took a step closer. "You never told me what that thing does." She exhaled, her expression grim. "It's a beacon." Jack's blood ran cold. A beacon for what? The girl swallowed hard. For them. Before Jack could demand an explanation, the jungle exploded into chaos. Arrows whistled through the air. Jack barely had time to grab the girl and dive for cover as spears embedded themselves in the trees around them. A guttural battle cry rang out from the shadows. Jack rolled onto his back and fired. His bullets tore through the underbrush, forcing their attackers to scatter. The tribes had regrouped faster than he anticipated. And this time, they were furious. The girl gritted her teeth, her fingers working rapidly over the glowing symbols on her wristband. The light intensified, flickering wildly as it sent out a silent signal into the night. Jack pulled her behind a fallen tree just as more arrows rained down. "I really hope the thing is calling for help and not more trouble." She didn't answer, too focused on whatever she was doing. Jack peeked over the log. The warriors were closing in, their faces painted with rage and grief. They weren't just attacking. They were mourning. They had lost their god. And now they wanted blood. Jack checked his ammo. Not enough. They wouldn't survive a prolonged fight. The girl gasped suddenly, her eyes widening. The wristband's glow flared brighter, illuminating their hiding spot. Jack cursed. "What the hell are you doing? You're making us a target." The girl shook her head. "They're coming." Jack tensed. "Who's coming?" Before she could answer, the sky split open. A blinding column of blue light descended from the heavens, piercing through the jungle canopy like a celestial sword. The air crackled with energy as an enormous shadow loomed overhead. Jack's heart pounded. It was a ship. A massive, sleek structure hovered above them, its dark surface humming with unfamiliar technology. Strange symbols glowed along its hull, identical to the markings on the ancient ruins. The tribal warriors froze. For the first time, Jack saw something in their expressions other than anger. Fear. The ship emitted a low, resonant hum. Then, a beam of light shot down, enveloping Jack and the girl in its glow. Jack's stomach lurched as the ground disappeared beneath him. He was rising. Fast. The last thing he saw before the jungle vanished below was the terrified faces of the warriors, staring up at them in utter disbelief. And then, darkness. Jack's vision blurred as the blinding light faded, leaving him momentarily disoriented. A strange sensation washed over him. Weightlessness. His boots no longer touched the ground. His arms floated slightly, unrestrained by gravity. It was as if the very air around him had shifted. He blinked hard, trying to focus. The jungle was gone. The chaos, the tribal warriors, the suffocating humidity, all replaced by the cold, sterile environment of what he quickly realized was inside the alien ship. The walls pulsed with faint blue light, sleek and metallic, adorned with shifting symbols that seemed almost alive. The air was unnaturally still, And yet Jack could feel a hum, not a sound, but a presence, as if the ship itself was aware of their arrival. He turned his head, searching for the girl. She was beside him, hovering slightly above the smooth floor, her silver eyes flickering with unreadable emotion. Unlike him, she didn't seem surprised. If anything, she looked resigned. Jack gritted his teeth, steadying himself as his body slowly adjusted to the artificial gravity. What the hell just happened? The girl didn't answer immediately. Her gaze shifted upward, toward the ceiling. No, toward something beyond it. They responded, she finally murmured. Jack frowned. Who? Before she could answer, a deep, resonant voice echoed through the chamber. It didn't come from a speaker or any visible source. It came from everywhere at once. Subject 47 has been retrieved. Primary objective complete. Awaiting further instructions. Jack stiffened. The words weren't in English, but somehow he understood them. They seeped into his mind like an undeniable truth, bypassing language barriers entirely. The girl exhaled. They found me. Jack snapped his head toward her. You knew this would happen, didn't you? She hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. I activated the beacon. It was the only way to escape. Jack clenched his fists. And what happens now? Before she could answer, the walls shifted. A section of the metallic surface peeled away as if it were liquid metal, revealing a vast chamber beyond. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, and in the center of the room, a towering figure stood waiting. Jack's breath caught in his throat. The being was *** tall, inhumanly tall. *** with elongated limbs and skin that shimmered like polished obsidian. Its face was expressionless, smooth and featureless, except for two piercing white eyes that radiated power. Strange glyphs glowed along its body, pulsating in sync with the ship itself. Jack's instincts screamed at him to move, to run, but there was nowhere to go. The girl stepped forward, her shoulders squared, but there was an undeniable tension in her posture. I did what I had to, she said, her voice steady but filled with something Jack couldn't quite place. Regret. Defiance. The towering figure tilted its head slightly. Then it spoke. You have broken protocol. Your presence on the surface was unauthorized. Jack frowned. What the hell did that mean? The girl's jaw tightened. I was taken. I didn't have a choice. The figure's glowing eyes narrowed slightly. You made contact. That is unfortunate. Jack's pulse quickened. He didn't like where this was going. The girl shook her head. He helped me. He saved me. Silence. Then, slowly, the figure turned its gaze onto Jack. Jack felt it, not just the stare, but something deeper. As if his very mind was being examined, peeled apart layer by layer. He fought against it, gritting his teeth, but it was like resisting an ocean current. Memories flashed. The moment he found her, the first time he saw her fear. The battle with the tribal beings, the ruins collapsing, the beacon activating, every decision, every instinct, every feeling, laid bare. Then, as quickly as it began, it stopped. Jack staggered back, gasping. The figure straightened. His interference is problematic. The girl stepped in front of Jack, shielding him. You can't harm him. I won't let you. For the first time, the figure's glowing eyes dimmed. A shift. A hesitation. Then another voice. This one different, colder, sharper, rang through the chamber. Terminate him. The human is a liability. Jack's muscles tensed. So this was how it ended. The girl's hands balled into fists. No, if he dies, then you might as well kill me too. Silence. Then the figure before them let out a slow, measured breath. That is not necessary. There are other ways. Jack didn't like the sound of that. The figure extended a hand. The walls of the chamber shifted again, revealing an expanse of deep space beyond. Stars burned against an endless void, stretching out in all directions. You will leave this sector immediately. Both of you. Jack's heart pounded. Wait, what? The girl's eyes widened. You're banishing us. The figure inclined its head. A choice must be made. He cannot remain on Earth after what he has seen. And you, Subject 47, have compromised our existence. The surface is no longer an option. Jack's mind reeled. So what? We're just supposed to wander space for the rest of our lives. The figure didn't answer. Instead, the floor beneath them began to glow. Jack barely had time to react before the world tilted around him, and suddenly, they were falling. Not down, forward, through a swirling mass of stars, through dimensions unknown, through a gateway that should not exist. Jack barely had time to curse before the universe itself swallowed them whole.